Beware of what you desire. You can have it. I can't count how many times my old man said that. A cliche? Yeah. Really? Yeah, definitely. No goddamn doubt about it. Take my marriage, for example. For years, all I dreamed of was marrying Christine, having a big house and eventually kids, and a thriving career making tons of money. And Christine? She wanted, I thought, the same thing. Come to think of it, she really did want pretty much the same things. You know, a life of luxury and glamour, a happy marriage to her high school sweetheart, that is me, a bigger house, and a bigger credit limit. Most of our dreams came true before they ruined us. Truth be told, my marriage was dead 5 years before the papers were signed, sealed, and filed in the courthouse clerk's office. I just didn't know it at the time. The reason? I did what Christine wanted me to do. I chased my dream and moved to West Palm Beach to take a high-paying job as a bond salesman. West Palm, she said, her pale blue eyes sparkling. Just imagine it, Tyler. Palm trees, beaches, warm sunshine. No snow. She smiled, one of those 1,000-watt smiles showing off her perfectly straight, gleaming white teeth and cute little dimples on her cheeks. Especially no snow. And good job, I said. Good job, baby, she said, and hugged me tightly before pouncing on me with her lips and tongue. So judging by her initial reaction, I guess you'll have to excuse me for being surprised that her dream wasn't what she'd imagined it to be. However, I did not expect her to play it the way she did. On the contrary, her ultimate actions still amaze me to this day. 3 years after moving to West Palm, the problems began in earnest. But I, silly donkey, didn't notice what they really were. She's just homesick, I thought at the time. She needs to get her mind off of thoughts of her sister and parents in Grant City and focus on all the things we were doing well at the time. By then, I was third in the company in bond sales, making over $250,000 a year. We had a nice house mortgaged to the hilt, a couple of luxury sedans in the garage, and Christine had a smooth tan and an extensive closet. What she didn't have was a job or a large number of friends. Or me, for that matter. The problem with being such a successful bond salesman, which is why they paid me $250,000 a year, was that I was gone half the time. I was flying from Dallas to Atlanta, then from the Big Easy to the Big Apple, selling our products to end marketers who sold to the public or to their select customers. When I wasn't flying 2 or 3 weeks a month, I was working 70 hours a week trying to make new contacts and future sales. Get it? Get it? I'm a dumbass, and I probably should have been paying more attention on the home front. Sure, Christine grumbled, but that always led to a whole new set of problems. Can't you just cut back a little? She'd say. Sure, I shrugged. No problem, as long as you can do it too. And what does that mean? You know exactly what it means. Shopping. Jesus, Christine, I can cut back on shopping all I want. But if I do, we won't have as much money, okay? She was sulking over this. Seeing her sulking, I tried, every damn time, not knowing what to do, to point out reality to her. Of course, I continued, you could always go out and get a job on your own, you know. You have a degree after all. But I'm not certified to teach in Florida. Then get certified. And when you get it, I'll downsize and we'll... I don't want to teach, Tyler, she said in her usually louder voice. You know that. Then I went through every argument I could think of. If she just got a job, she'd meet new people, she'd make new friends, she'd make more money, she wouldn't sit at home all day from boredom, I'd be able to cut costs, and so on and so forth. But my arguments went unheeded. She wanted both. She wanted to be taken care of, just as her father had always taken care of her mother. But she wanted me home every night, too. She wanted the Ward and June Cleaver lifestyle, albeit a much more elite one than little Beaver Cleaver had envisioned. And me? Well, I wanted to give her what she wanted. She was the one. The love of my life. The only girl I'd dated since we started dating as sophomores. In high school, college, and before marriage, we were always together. Everyone told us from the beginning that we were the perfect couple. Smart, attractive, popular, outgoing. You remember us. The prom king and queen who always made everything look easy. And up until we moved to West Palm, everything always came easy. But then I got into the real world of high finance and learned that it takes hard work, and long hours, and sacrifice. But I was ready, willing, and able to make those sacrifices. I didn't have any money. Both mom and dad worked their asses off to make sure Benny and I had everything while we were growing up. They made sure we had our own jobs, too. From the age of 14, I cleaned the shop, sharpened tools, stacked lumber, and did other crappy jobs in Dad's cabinet making and woodworking shop. So I learned early on what it meant to work 12 hours a day. Christine, however, never understood it. Her father was president of Grant City Savings Bank, and she had never had a job in her life. Come to think of it, her mom had never had a job either. And I know for a fact that her sister Priscilla never worked. Oh no, not sweet little Priscilla. She got her teaching degree and certificate and then married the first lawyer she could find. She was happy at home with 4 kids and a husband who broke his back to keep her happy. So yes, you are right. I should have seen it from afar. But I didn't, so what to do? I mean, remember, we were together for 11 years, she was the only girl I dated, and I just couldn't imagine life without her. The situation became critical in my 4th year of college. Looking back when I finally pulled my head out of my ass, I realized that I really missed my chance to save our marriage then. I want to go home for a few weeks, she said, as I packed my suitcase for a trip to Vegas. When? Tomorrow, she said. And when will you be back? She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe in a couple weeks. Maybe? Jesus, Tyler, you'll be gone 10 days this time, and I'll be here. 10 days. Alone. And I'll have nothing to do. Come on, Christine, I said. Why don't you just find... I'm not getting a goddamn job, she yelled. Give me a break already. I don't want that. I want a family. Why can't we just start a family, Tyler? This argument had been going on for almost 2 years now, but I didn't want to be a stay-at-home dad. Can't you wait a little longer? I begged. Let me pay off the second mortgage and pay off the first mortgage some more. Then I can afford to cut back on my traveling and hours. Yeah, right. And what the hell am I supposed to do in the meantime? You could help. That's what you could do, I shouted, surprised at my sudden disappointment. You could use your damn degree and get a goddamn job and maybe contribute instead of spending every goddamn cent I'm busting my ass for. Her initial shock turned to rage. Screw you, she said, and walked away. I'm going home to my folks. I'll come back when I get back. The first stay lasted almost a month. I tried to call her every day, but I got home from a 10-day trip before I caught her at home. What are you so busy doing? I asked. Well, you know, meeting up with old friends, spending time with Scylla and the kids. My attempts to elicit details or at least try to get her to warm up to me were reduced to vague answers and empty declarations of love. I knew it even then, but I was afraid to admit that my marriage might crash and burn. When I suggested she take the time to fly down to see her and our families, she just ignored me, and I didn't. The next time she flew home 5 months later, I too received the same rebuff. 10 months after Kristen's first trip home, I returned from a short trip to Minneapolis. It was 5 days before Christmas, and I was taking the next 2 weeks off. The best part was that while in Minneapolis, I had snagged Midlands Financial as a client, which guaranteed me a steady stream of recurring sales and possibly a promotion to the coveted vice president position I had been looking forward to. The hours would still be long, perhaps 50 or more a week, but my out-of-town trips would virtually disappear. And with the pay raise and sales commissions at Midlands, it was time to start a family. I have a big surprise for you, I'd told her the night before on the phone. Christine, however, didn't seem all that excited. No anticipation, no attempt to pry from me what it was. Nothing. Just, sure, Tyler, we'll talk when you get back. But we didn't. And we never would talk, I realized, standing in the foyer and looking at my nearly empty living room. While I was gone, she busied herself leaving. She'd left, without a word of warning. Chapter 2. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, the phone rang. Hello? Ty, honey, what's going on? Hi, Mom, I said, deflating. It wasn't Christine. I don't know what's going on. Kristen left. Why didn't you say anything last week? We talked every Saturday or Sunday. Mom, Dad, and me. Ty? She repeated. I don't know what's going on. She's gone. I came home from work and she's gone. She came home, Mom said. With her folks. I saw Dorothy at the store the other day. She told me. Did she tell you why? Gave you a reason? Anything? No, honey. Just said Christine had come home and was living with them. And what are you going to do about it, boy? Barked the father on the other line. Nothing, Dad. What can I do about it? Fly over there and beg her to come back. You've got to do something, haven't you? Said Dad. No, Dad, no, she's already done it. Made the decision, without even talking to me. So that's it? You're just going to give up? I'm not giving up, I said, my voice getting hot. Edwin, Mom said, leave the boy alone. He's confused. Well, he needs to not be confused, Dad objected. Dad, I said, calming down and trying not to let them get into an argument. I came home from a trip. I got promoted. I wanted to tell her I'd work less and we could start a family. But instead, I walked into an empty house. She was gone, along with most of the furniture. I'm going to sleep in this damn chair, okay? No conversation, no phone call, no note. Nothing. Oh, honey, Mom lamented. Uh-huh, Dad said. So I'm pretty sure chasing her to Grant City and begging her to come back would be a waste of time, okay? After all, she won't even return my calls. Dad and Mom sighed in unison. A week later, I was personally served with a summons for Christine's petition for dissolution of marriage. I think that's the legal wording for, I'm moving on, asshole. Let's move on to the divorce case. Kristen filed for divorce in Lincoln County, Illinois, where we were from and where she now lived with her in-laws. The thought of coming home for the divorce kept me on my toes, especially since I would have to take a vacation, and she wasn't working at all. So I requested and obtained a transfer of the lawsuit to Palm Beach County, Florida. That pissed her off, and she decided to hire a real shark. But my shark turned out to be bigger, and she ended up getting a good thrashing in a blindingly fast divorce proceeding. It was so easy because we had only my only income, a house, no kids, minimal debt, and only a few healthy bills. The attorneys settled almost everything without the judge's involvement. Since she took all the furniture, she was ordered to pay off the credit cards used to buy the furniture. This, of course, was out of her equal share of our marital home, which was sold for next to nothing 2 months after she left in the then hot Florida real estate market. The only thing the judge had to decide was the issue of alimony. So Christine had to fly in and attend one court hearing. It must be said that the starchy, carbohydrate-laden diet of Midwesterners didn't seem to do her any good. She looked a little chubbier than I remembered, maybe 15 pounds heavier. She definitely had an I hate you look, though. Anyway, it was a child support case. Christine demanded $4,000 a month for 3 years, and then it was renegotiated. I didn't demand any alimony at all. The judge, an old bastard with gray hair on his head, ears, nose, and eyebrows, and a voice like a rasp, laughed loudly at Christine's request and looked sadly at my refusal to pay anything. He gave her 1 year, $2,000 a month, and I would never have to pay her another dime. No matter. It was less than 10% of my paycheck. When the bailiff called a recess signifying the end of our case, Christine ran out of the courthouse without saying a word. Priscilla threw me a burning look, then hurried after her sister. I just stood there, still as damn clueless as I was when I first walked into my empty house just 3 months ago. No note, no email, no voicemail message. When I called to talk to her, she refused to talk to me. Nothing. Over 10 years together, and I hadn't even honored a damn explanation. Was I angry? No. I was tired. Confused. exhausted by the whole sad affair. What was the cause? If it wasn't for her explanation, which she didn't seem to want to share with me, I was left to speculate. She was lonely away from her family. She was lonely with me working all the time. She wanted a family, and I wasn't ready. The saddest part is that most of her loneliness was cured the day I found out she left me. Now we could have had a family. I would have been home most of the time. We would have been together more often. Obviously, it was too little and too late. So there I stood, weary to the bone, watching the courtroom door close behind my ex-wife. The only woman I had ever loved. The only woman I had ever been with and wanted to be with. I felt a hand on my shoulder, a soft heaviness. "I'm sorry, son," said the judge, standing beside me now. His voice was soft, as if he could read my absolute emptiness. "Things will get better. Just give it time." I only nodded, hesitating to speak lest I cry like a baby. Chapter 13. Suddenly, though involuntarily, it seemed to me that 3 avenues were open before me. First, I could go out and confirm that I was still a great guy. To do that, of course, I would have to spend every waking hour sleeping with every girl in sight. This, of course, had its advantages. Obviously, I would broaden my horizons, which couldn't have been more gratifying. But let's face it, experience wasn't my strong suit when I'd only been with one woman my whole life. What if I couldn't handle it and became a laughingstock? Second, I could dive headfirst into work, in which case I'd probably make even more money that I didn't need and guarantee a complete lack of free time to try to find a life outside of work. Besides, I was working so hard just to make ends meet and give Christine what I thought she wanted to be happy. Yet my old man always said it best. Do you want to work to live or live to work? Now that my salary was over $300,000 a year, I decided to work to live. Third, I could have just said screw it. Quit my job, move, start a new life. There was a certain amount of appeal to that too. Heck, who doesn't want to just jettison everything that's wrong and start fresh in some strange place with complete strangers who won't constantly remind you that you're a failure at marriage? There was a certain adventurous pathos about him that appealed to me. You know, a Jack Kerouac kind of thing. After much thought, at least in the time it took me to drink 2 margaritas, I decided on a plan of action. It would be all 3 options. I will work until I drop and go to a new place and start fresh. In doing so, I will work on my college major. English, not sales or finance. You'd be surprised how many salespeople study English. I mean, besides teaching, what the hell else is there to do with an English degree? I wanted to write. I loved that activity in high school and college, but I never had time for it, as marriage and work took all my energy. Well, there was no better time than now, and it seemed like the perfect distraction from life. So I devoted every spare minute outside of work to writing. When writer's block hit, I'd go to clubs and try to get laid. No relationships, mind you. I was an emotional wreck, and the thought of getting close to a woman other than for fun made me want to puke. Still, entertainment sounded pretty good. I started that same night. I'll never forget it. Most people get drunk or try to get laid on divorce day, but I spent the rest of the day in my apartment trying to come up with story ideas. What if this? What if this? What if, a man leaves his wife for no reason, and then she disappears, and no one knows where she is, and he's lost without her, and consumed with searching for her, and wondering if she was murdered, kidnapped, or just ran away. This guy, the poor bastard whose wife ran away. Let's make him, a bond salesman? Too boring. Private investigator? Too corny. Oh, I'm getting close. Sheriff? Yeah. Small town deputy. Backwoods town. Who's beaten down by his job and his existence, and the only bright shining beacon in his universe is a wife who's always been too good for him. Close. How about a police? Lieutenant? After all, it would seem that the sheriff could get a month off to find his wife. But where does he live and work? How about Rockford, Illinois, a larger city of 150,000 or so, about 40 miles from Grant City. That seemed like a better option. And so it began, with a series of what ifs. Wild permutations of my own crazy situation, my own screwed up what ifs. What if the only woman you ever loved decided she didn't love you anymore? Or loves someone else more? Or maybe she never loved you at all? 2 months into the relationship, my mom called out of the blue on a Tuesday night. "She's getting married," Mom said with sadness in her voice. "Christine," said I, stunned that she had replaced me so quickly. "Christine," Mom confirmed. "To Randy Walters." "The cop?" "The very one." "It didn't take her long," I said. "I think it started before she even left you," Mom said. "At least that's what they say. They started dating when she started coming here to visit her folks." "Goddamn bitch." "And," Mom said, pausing before giving the rest of the story away in a rush, "she's pregnant." I was stunned. That damn cold, conniving, heartless, promiscuous, manipulative, vindictive, narcissistic, spiteful. "Say something, honey," Mom interrupted my mental tirade. "What's there to say?" interjected Dad. "Screw her." "Edwin," Mom sighed. "No, Mom," I said through gritted teeth. "Dad's right. Screw her." The phone went silent for a moment after a second, more audible sigh from Mom at my scolding. "So what are Dorothy and Laverne saying about their little princess now?" said I. "They're upset," Mom said. "Laverne still acts like his shit doesn't stink," Dad cut in. "But he's forced to do it, Edwin. You've seen it for yourself. And Dorothy couldn't even look anyone in the eye when she talked about it." "Good," I said. "It's nice to see that Christine has now disappointed or hurt someone other than me, isn't it?" "No, Tyler, that's not good," Dad said, his voice getting softer. "That's not good at all. It's bad that she hurt you. But the fact that she caused such embarrassment to her family only makes it worse." "What's there to be embarrassed about?" said I. "She came home. Their precious little princess is back in town, and now they can see her all the time. And their new baby is with that jerk Randy Walters. And they can go on, they and Priscilla for that matter, they can go on telling her how special she is. And her damn brat too." "You're hurting, Tyler," Mom said. "We know that. But don't let your anger turn into hate. Don't let it eat you up, honey. Please. Don't do it." "What doesn't kill us only makes us stronger," I said. "Or rotten through and through," Dad added. But I didn't feel rotten through. Not even in the slightest. No, Christine was rotten to the core. I was just a dumbass who hid my head in the sand when all the signals were there. I was just a goddamn knucklehead who was willing to look through my fingers to preserve what was already screwed up. The good news was that my alimony was due to run out before the end of the year. Apparently, her marriage had stopped paying alimony the moment she married the bastard. So there you go, Christine. Screw you. After that phone call, the scenario took a darker turn than the originally planned happy ending. Much darker. 2 months later, as I wrote like an obsessive every night from 6 to midnight and 10 to 4 or 5 on weekends, I had a complete outline of my first novel. Character biographies were written while I was rooting over the outline, and they were constantly being added to as the outline progressed. Suddenly, I sat down. At 10:30 at night, all these months later, 9 months after she'd left me, 6 months after I'd started with a finished outline. That's when I realized I hadn't gone to bed in over 9 months. Hell, I hadn't even thought about getting laid. But now that the first step in my new life had been taken, I realized that my balls were ready to explode if relief didn't come soon. Pardon the pun. Anyway, the writing would have to wait another day or two. 10:30 seemed a little late for a walk, but West Palm is a swanky neighborhood with lots of nightclubs and lots of young people. For some reason I couldn't remember from when I was younger, people. 25 and under never showed up before 9. Thus, there was little chance of getting laid at 10:30 on a Thursday night. Half an hour later, I found myself at Matt's, a sports bar and dance club with a packed parking lot. As I made my way through the doors into the bar, I received smiles, glances, or light touches from at least 10 pretty chicks, dressed to the hilt and clearly missing who they were still with. At least 3 of them had wedding rings, which almost made me run away before the first beer. But eventually, with beer in hand, I made my way to a table near the dance floor. If anything, I could amuse myself by watching men who thought they could dance sway to the beat with slender beach babes who seemed to be dancing with themselves in their own little worlds. Unfortunately, watching the crowd of tightly clad women squirming on the floor with their faux hipster companions made me realize one simple thing I hadn't paid attention to before. How the hell am I supposed to hook up with someone? Remember, I've only asked one person out in my entire life. Christine, almost 12 years ago, when we were in high school, for God's sake. Since that fateful day, I've never needed to hit on another girl. Sure, there had been innocent flirtations with women in the office, but both parties knew it was going nowhere. Hell, I wouldn't even recognize the signals if they were flashing neon lights in front of my damn face. "Hello," said a cool voice with a soft southern accent to my right, interrupting my thoughts. I turned around. My deer in the headlights look no doubt altering my features. She suppressed a laugh at my reaction, then raised her eyebrows and nodded at the empty chair across from me. I shifted my gaze from the chair to her, then back again. "Oh," I said, standing up so quickly that the table nearly toppled over. "Of course. You're welcome. Excuse me." Now she wasn't trying to hide her amusement. "First time here?" she said, lowering herself into the chair across from me. I nodded. "I'm Susan," she said, extending her hand across the table. "Tyler," I said, shaking her cool, surprisingly strong hand. She was tall, swarthy, and beautiful. She looked to be about 28 years old, give or take a few years. "So, Tyler," she said, sipping her drink through a straw and keeping her gaze on me. "What brings you here tonight?" Her frank demeanor was striking. It was clear what she wanted, and she was defiantly trying to figure out if I was looking for the same thing. I think. "I don't—" "How long ago did you get divorced?" she asked. "Is that obvious?" "I'm afraid so." "6 months?" I sighed, answering her original question. 9 since she left. 6 since the divorce. "And this is your first outing since then?" I nodded, trying to decide whether to leave before I made an even bigger fool of myself. "She must have been something special," Susan continued. "Most people come out here a week after a divorce. And you waited 6 whole months. Hell, 9, actually." "Yeah. Well, I didn't really, you know, it's been a while since you've done that, right?" she said. I nodded. "And you're not thinking straight anymore, right?" "Right." "Good," she said, finishing her drink and setting it aside. "Here's how it goes. You're pretty cute, okay?" I just stared back at her, not knowing if I should say anything. "And I don't have a lot of time," she continued. "So I'll tell you simple. You want to get out of here?" My eyes widened. Was it that simple? Just show up, alone, and some goddess would pick me up and offer to entertain me? She laughed, a deep, throaty laugh. "I think we can go through the formalities. You buy me a few drinks, and I play rummy with you for an hour or so. Then we dance a few times. We start with faster numbers, and finally, when a slow song comes on, I let you know I'm available and interested. Do you like it better that way?" "Well, I, uh, what do you prefer?" She laughed, pushing back her chair and standing up. "This will be fun," she said, reaching out her hand to mine. "Let's not waste time on formalities," she said. "I have to work early, so let's go." We drove in separate cars to my house. Once inside, she looked around. "Nice. Better than most bachelor apartments, especially divorced ones." After a couple hours, she pulled herself together and said, "All right then." "Okay," I agreed. She turned and smiled at me. "I'm not really... I have court in the morning." "Court?" said I. "Who did I just have fun with? Charlie Manson's love child?" "I'm a lawyer," she said. My eyebrows flew upward. A lawyer? Don't look at me like that, she said. You, of all people, should know what that's like. Meaning what? Meaning, she said, looking at the stack of folders and printouts on my dining room table and taking up most of the kitchen table. That we both work high pressure, long hours. I don't have time for a relationship, you know. But that doesn't mean I don't have needs. Like this, for example. I smiled. I'm not judging you, Susan. I really don't. I mean, come on. I'm of all people. Then why that look? She asked. Just surprised, I said. Well, you know, you're beautiful. And now I find out, afterward, no less, that you're also smart and successful and all that. I mean, I just never did before. I guess I just didn't expect it, you know. She nodded, then smiled. She stood up and adjusted her dress, then walked over to me and leaned over. Well, Tyler, what's your name? If you want to play this game, you might as well get used to surprises like this. So that means... It means, she said, maybe we'll meet again, maybe we won't. You know, play it by ear. Okay? I nodded, frustrated and relieved at the same time. Upset because the whole thing felt kind of cheap and empty, and relieved that she didn't expect more from me. It was another month before I could go out and try to get laid again. In the meantime, I spent all my free hours in my den, writing, and writing again. Even though it had only been a month since I'd finished the outline, the writing was very fast. I had thought out the outline down to the smallest detail, so all I had to do was put in the descriptive prose and dialogue that seemed to fly off my fingertips, through the keyboard, and onto the screen. A month later, I was almost a third of the way through from outline to my first completed novel. And then my suppressed physical desires reasserted themselves. It was a Saturday afternoon, a little after 4, and I'd been sitting at the computer for almost 8 hours. Deciding not to fight it, I dressed in a pair of khakis and a pale blue Oxford shirt and sandals and headed back to Matt's. I ended up staying there for about 3 hours, buying drinks and dancing, and then left again, this time with a frilly little Cuban girl named Sofia Martinez in my arms. The next morning, over a cup of coffee, I stared out the sliding glass door of my apartment at the gray waters and sky over the Atlantic, pondering my personal life. Several questions immediately arose. First, sex when you're single is very different when you're married. It's more selfish, and it's more so on both sides. Second, there were many more referrals. Third, despite the selfishness on both sides, there was also an insecurity, a hesitancy to really put yourself out. There. If I do this, I thought a few times, will she get mad and leave? Won't that ruin the mood? Finally, it all seemed so impersonal. Would I ever get used to it? On the other hand, there was no way I was going to be chasing a real girl or a real relationship anytime soon. Finishing my second cup of coffee, I made my decision. Right now, my life was good. A little lonely, sure, but still good. The book was progressing, work was in full swing, and I was having fun when the pressure reached a crescendo. If mindless fun with strangers was the price for everything else going well, then so be it. I vowed to set aside every Saturday night for myself and my attempts to get laid. Maybe I just get used to it, maybe not. If it becomes too much, I'll just stop. I know. It's kind of a dilemma, isn't it? A year ago, I was supposed to do it with a woman for the rest of my life. I'll admit, she was, and still is, one of the most beautiful women, so the thought didn't really bother me. Still, having fun with a bunch of women should be every man's dream, right? And here I am. I wished for something different, and when I got it, it wasn't quite what it really was. But it was still better than my right arm. Chapter 4. 5 months and about a dozen forgotten nights later, I finished my first ever novel. 350,000 plus words about the harrowing journey of a man trying to figure out where she'd gone and why. Half mystery, half betrayal, half suspense thriller. If that sounds like too many halves, that's because a lot went into this first novel. And it wasn't a first draft. I edited it twice, getting rid of typos, condensing some scenes and expanding others, changing some nuances of speech here and there and everywhere. It was another Saturday night, a little after 7, and I just stared at the screen. "What now?" I said out loud, because I didn't know what to do now. Another night on a cruise for mindless fun with a beach bimbo didn't seem out of the question to me. And I realized I was done. There's nothing else. Hell, I couldn't even remember half their names. After Susan and Sophia, there was a redhead, then a brunette, then another Cuban chick, then some other chicks. And it's never the same one. I was faced with a more pressing problem. I had written a book, and what the hell was I supposed to do with it? Realizing nothing, I started scouring the internet. By the end of the weekend, I had compiled a to-do list of things I needed to do to see if I could deal with this enormity that had taken 13 months of my life. Task number 1. Find an agent. Publishers rarely consider manuscripts submitted cold, so I need an agent to read the book and, if it's good enough, offer it to a publisher. I spent the next week drafting cover letters to 24 agents in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. Each one included a copy of the manuscript. Don't ask me how much it cost to make 40 copies of the manuscript. Just buy Kinko's stock, because they charged me a damn dime. Then I started writing another novel. Admittedly, this time it didn't come together as quickly. It took me almost a month to come up with a full list of what-ifs and answers before I was ready to start outlining. At the end of that month, having already received 11 rejection letters from multiple agents, I decided to go all out. No, not to get laid. Just to go out, grab a bite to eat, have a couple glasses of margaritas, and watch people have fun. "Still one, I see," said a voice behind me as I sipped my second margarita. And I didn't even have to turn around to realize who it was. "How are you doing, Susan?" "Very well," she replied, as she made her way between the chairs and sat down across from me. "And I thought you'd forgotten." I smiled. "It's hard to forget your first time." She laughed. I beckoned to the waitress, pointed to Susan, and then to my nearly empty glass. The waitress merely nodded, then hurried to the bar to take our order. "Thank you," Susan said. She didn't look much different than when I saw her many months ago. Same killer body, covered this time by a white dress, and her dark hair seemed a little straighter and a little shorter. Other than that, it was the same Susan. "So what brings you here?" I said, smirking and raising my eyebrows. She smiled and shrugged her shoulders in response. "Probably the same thing that brought you." I shook my head. "Not this time? I'm a little tired of it." Her eyebrows went up, and her face said she didn't really believe me. "Seriously," I said. I guess I'm just not built that way." "And you seem to be built just fine," she said. "Are you sure I haven't turned you away from all this?" I laughed. "Oh no, I've had my share of others, and they've been good, don't get me wrong. But, I don't know. I guess it's just not for me." Her face went soft, and she leaned across the table and put her hand on mine. To tell you the truth, it was pretty obvious at the time. "You're one of the good ones, you know." "How's that?" "You're fit for marriage. It's contraindicated for you to keep seeing different women. You need more." "And you realized that in just one evening?" She nodded. "Even before we left here to come back to you. Clear as the nose on your face, Tyler." "You remember my name?" I said, surprised. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "I don't remember many names, but your name I remember." I felt pouty at that. "Was I that good?" She laughed. There was amusement and regret in her eyes. "In ways you'll never know, baby. Yes, you were and are that good." The drinks arrived, and we were silent for a few moments, sipping and watching the dance floor. "You don't have any friends here?" she asked suddenly. I was quiet for a moment before answering, contemplating how to take the question. "Some. People I work with. We get together sometimes. After work. Maybe a few house parties." She shook her head. "Not like that. I mean friends. Not just acquaintances you see every day and talk to about work and stuff. I mean buddies you watch football games with, go hunting with, people like that. I shook my head. I guess not. Pretty sad, she said. I mean, you're a nice guy. You're easy to talk to. You seem like you care about people. So what do you do when you're not working? I mean, you don't chase women anymore. What do you do with all your time? Writing, I said. Books. Just finished one, a month or so ago. You're a writer? I shook my head. Bond salesman. Vice president at McDaniel Smith. A bond salesman who writes books in his spare time, she said. A little unusual. She pondered this for a moment, giving me an appraising look. And when will I get to read this book? She asked. I laughed. Probably never. I doubt anyone's really going to publish it. Then why do it? Because I like writing. More than you like people? It was a tough question, and I pondered it in my mind. When did this happen to me? In high school and college, I was surrounded by friends, real friends, close friends. I didn't even know what they were doing now. We all lost touch. I lost touch. And when I got married, Christine started to feel like that was enough. Between work and home, I didn't have time to make friends. I'd lived in Florida for over 6 years, and I didn't have a single friend for 500 miles. I'm sorry, Susan said after a few moments of silence. I tried to smile. No, it's okay. It just made me realize something. She tried to smile, but the smile came out sad. Things aren't going so well, are they? I smiled. Things are going well. Really. Let me get you another drink. If you're not in a hurry or anything. Sure, she said. I asked for fresh drinks to be brought, and the waitress returned with them in a flash. So you're a lawyer, I said, breaking the silence. Uh-huh. Do you happen to know any agents? Maybe one that will at least let me read? A shot? I knew. I was hyping it up. But it was worth a shot, and I could tell by the look on her face that she was considering it. Then a light flashed in her eyes, and a few seconds later, her lips stretched into a smirk. A lecherous smirk. Maybe, she said. How much is it worth to you? I told you, I'm out of this game. She shrugged. Then what can you offer to make it worth my while? Money? She shook her head. That I've realized. My boundless gratitude? That's not enough. Dinner? You've already eaten. I looked at her. What's it going to cost me? Just for tonight? She made an exaggeratedly hurt look. Am I really that bad? I smiled. You know better than that. It's just... The weekend, she said, her eyes stopping on mine. Starting right now. But it's already Saturday night, I said. So when you say weekend, I mean I want to actually sleep with you, in your bed, to wake up with you. I want to know what it feels like, okay? And then spend tomorrow with you, all the way through dinner. But you can get that from half the guys here, I protested. But you're not half the guys here, she objected. I don't feel cheap when I'm with you, okay? I want to know what a guy like you, a guy who looks at me as more than just a receptacle to take my jock off, what a guy is like to spend time with. You want to date, I said. She shook her head. Sorry, sport. My situation hasn't changed much. I'm still on the road half the time and burning midnight candles when I get back to base. So I'm not good for dating. No, I just want to know, at least for one day, what I'm giving up here. I pondered her words. Truth be told, I felt sorry for her. She was successful. You could tell by her jewelry and dress, which must have cost pennies. Plus, she was practicing law, which meant she must have worked for a larger firm that probably handled bigger clients and bigger cases. So, she had realized all of her dreams and now wanted to know how much they had cost her. Frankly, I would have let her spend the night on those terms, but not without persuasion. Still, if she wanted to help me and all that. Does that make me a whore? I could tell she was awake. Her breathing had become softer and more rhythmic, There wasn't the light snoring she had been making just a few minutes ago. She was lying on her side facing me, her long black hair cascading over her face and the pillow. But I could still see her face through the soft tangle and watched her lips twitch and her eyes close further. "Please tell me you're not watching me," she whispered. "I'm not watching you," I said. She opened her eyes. "Liar. You're just as beautiful this morning as you were last night." She snorted incredulously. "I'm serious," I said. "So peaceful and quiet and calm." Her facial features softened. "And last night," I continued. "Well, let's just say you snored a lot. It was like sleeping with, well, oops." She slapped me on the head. "Careful, Buster." We laughed together. Then I leaned in to kiss her. "No," she said, pulling away. "I have morning breath." "Suit yourself," I said, sliding off the bed and heading for the bathroom. After getting rid of the 4 margaritas and numerous glasses of water that had kept my energy up the night before, I started brushing my teeth. "Mind if I join you?" she said. I turned and saw her standing in the doorway, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. And nothing else. I waved at her before rinsing my mouth out. "Spare toothbrush here," I said, opening the drawer and pointing to 5 toothbrushes still in their packaging. "Someone has a serious toothbrush fetish," she said, "along with other fetishes." "Tell me about it," she laughed, running her fingertips between my legs. She saw me watching, blushed, and pulled her hand away. We sat at the same sink, she flossed her teeth, and I shaved. Then we took a shower. Together. And it felt really, really, really good. So we spent the whole day entertaining each other? Oh, I'm sorry. It's pure fantasy. Instead, we spent the day walking on the beach and eating hamburgers at a beach shack. Then we went back to my apartment for a nap. When I opened my eyes, a lazy smile playing on my lips, Susan was sitting on the edge of the bed looking at me. And she was sad. "Bah! Do you ever wonder if you've made the wrong choices in life?" "Every day," I answered. "Not just in the little things," she clarified. "I mean the big things. Things like—" "I know exactly what you mean," I said. "And for the last year and a half, I've wondered every day if my wonderful job and wonderful paycheck are really worth it." She nodded, sympathy flooding her features, but then the sadness returned. "It was a mistake," she said. "Why?" "Because," she said. "Until last night, I had these feelings, you know? These fleeting thoughts that there's more to life than just a career. Maybe a family. A husband I love." A tear rolled down her cheek. "Waking up with the person I love and spending the day the way we did today." She turned away and I sat up and stroked her back. "But now I know what I've been missing," she continued. "It's like I've seen what I could have, but really can't have." "You know, it's not too late," I said softly. "You can still have these things. After all, how old are you? 26? 27? "I'll be 30 in 3 weeks," she said. "30 is the new 20, I said, pulling her to me and hugging her. "I don't know you very well, but I know at least a few things about you." "Like what?" she said, snuggling up to me as I wiped the tears from her face. "Well, I know that you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. You've already accomplished that in your career, right?" She nodded. "Then you can learn not to work so damn hard, make adjustments, and give yourself a chance to meet someone special, right?" "It's not that easy," she said. "No, it isn't. I'll tell you. It probably means you'll have to work somewhere else. People who don't work themselves to death 7 days a week. But there are places like that, right? Even lawyers, I suppose." She laughed. Then her voice turned soft. "You say it's so easy." I was silent for a moment. "It isn't." "What isn't?" she asked. "It's not easy," I said. "If it was, I would have done it by now. In my own life." "And that's why you got divorced?" I didn't know how to answer that. To be honest, I still wasn't sure why Christine had left. Sure, there was Randy Walters, and now there was their new baby. But what came first? Me working too hard or Randy Walters? I don't really know, I finally answered. At least partly, I guess. Probably to a large extent. But I don't think that was all of it. Susan turned to face me and kissed me on the lips, then hugged me with a death grip. Well, she made a hell of a mistake, Tyler. What's your name? It's Collins, I said. Tyler Collins. And I'm Karapova, she said. Susan Karapova. I sighed mockingly. Are you telling me I'm sleeping with a communist? She giggled against my neck and pulled me to her. The wall was torn down a while ago, she said. Gee, I'm just saying, you know? Her giggling intensified. You're shit. I made scrambled eggs and cheese and toast for dinner, and we ate in near silence. But it was a comfortable silence, broken only by the ringing of the phone. Mom, I thought. I missed the call that morning. Hello? Tyler, Dad said, his voice choked. What's wrong, Dad? Your mom, he said. She's in the hospital. Did you call Benny? He tried to squeeze out a no. I'll call him, I said. Then I'll get there as fast as I can. Hurry up, he said. Please. I promise, I said, but he'd already hung up. What's wrong? Asked Susan as I turned to face her. My mom, I said. I don't know. I gasped, and scared. She handled the crisis quickly and confidently. Benny is your brother? I nodded. Call him, she ordered, pulling her cell phone out of her purse and heading into the bedroom. I'll book you a ticket and get you packed. Chicago, I said. She turned and looked at me perplexed, and I repeated. Fly to Chicago. It's only an hour away. She nodded, dialing numbers into her cell phone, and then turned and headed back to the bedroom. Your book, Susan said as she drove me to the airport. What? I replied, turning back to her. Your book, she repeated. Where is it? I just stared at her, not understanding. Her eyes were fixed on the road, her face focused on the traffic, but I could see that her features had softened. I promised to get your book to an agent, she said. I'd like to fulfill my end of the bargain. You're kidding, right? I said. My mom's... Well, things are really bad. Maybe even worse than bad. And you're worried about our deal? No, she said. I'm not really worried about it. And I know you have more important things to do. But while I'm here, I want to do something for you, Tyler. Something to maybe take some of the burden off of you. Maybe give you something to take your mind off things. She was crying now. And I don't know what else I can do. I just want to... There are some copies in my room, I said, and reached into my pocket for my apartment keys. I started to remove the front door key from the ring and continued. They're in a box on the floor next to the computer. It's called Long Gone. She nodded, wiping the tears from her face and trying to smile. Okay, she said. I'll see what I can do. Thanks. And give me your phone, she said. Why? I'll put my number in it. Why don't you just give me your number and I'll program it, I said. You'll be able to focus on the road. She gave me her number, and I obediently entered it into my contact list. You want my number too? I said. She nodded. Nodded tensely and alertly, as if she was afraid to ask for my number. She handed me her BlackBerry and I added myself to her contacts. 10 minutes later, Susan walked me to the security line after 911. I hope everything works out, she said, hugging me tightly. Me too, I gasped, hugging her back just as tightly. Some kind of date, huh? You sure know how to show a girl a good time, she said, and tears came to her eyes. I dabbed her eyes with my thumb. Thanks for everything, I said. You saved my life today. And you saved my life too. Maybe my whole life. I kissed her, got in line, and didn't look back. I didn't trust myself to look back. Part 2. It was almost 2 in the morning when I drove my rental car into Grant City. Since Dad wasn't answering at home, I drove straight to the hospital. Dad, Benny, and Benny's wife Maureen were in the waiting room. When they saw me, they came up and we all took turns hugging. It's a stroke, Benny said as we hugged. How serious? We don't know yet, Dad said. They're running a bunch of tests right now. We won't know for a long time. I nodded, then turned to Benny and Maureen. Where are the kids? They're at my sister's, Maureen said. She's keeping them until we find out what's going on. That was it. I couldn't think of anything else to say, and neither could anyone else. We were all just scared, and no one wanted to voice their fears. A little after 4, a doctor came into the waiting room. He wasn't young, a few years older than me at most, and he looked dog-tired. How is she? Said Dad, rising vigorously to his feet. The doctor's look was grim. It was a stroke, he said. A serious one. What does that mean? Asked Benny. Is she going to be all right? The doctor looked at all of us. He sighed. She's going to live, but it's going to be a long, hard road. I don't care, Dad said. The doctor looked at him. She'll have severe physical impairments, paralysis on the right side of her body, and speech. She's going to need a lot of therapy, both speech and physical. But that will fix it, won't it? Said Dad, fear red in his eyes. The doctor shook his head. Not quite. I'm afraid a lot of things will stay forever. Dad looked like a balloon that had been pricked with a pin. He slowly lowered himself into the chair. Don't misunderstand me, the doctor hastened to intervene. She's still sharp as glass, and in time her speech will come back to her, though not as quickly as before. And she'll be able to walk again. She'll just limp. His father raised pleading eyes to him. Benny put his hand on Dad's knee. She'll get better, Dad. I put my hand on his shoulder. She's a fighter. Dad tried to laugh through the pain and fear. She is, he agreed. She'll get better. Just watch. You could see from the doctor's face that he doubted it, but he had the wit and compassion to just nod. 2 days later, Benny, Maureen, and I were sitting at the dining room table drinking our morning coffee. Dad was already at the hospital, making arrangements for Mom to be sent to the treatment center for an initial, and we were told, very intensive, course of physical therapy. I noticed Benny and Maureen glancing over, then at each other, Maureen raising her eyebrows and nodding her head in my direction. What? I said, looking at her. Just say it. Benny cleared his throat. Well, tie in. Someone's going to have to stick around for a while, Maureen said, flustered by Benny's attempt to state the obvious, which had been hanging over our heads for the past 2 days. I nodded. I know. Dad can't take care of himself, Benny added. Can't cook worth a damn, I agreed. And probably has no idea how to run the washer or dryer, Maureen added. And he's going to be really busy driving to and from the therapy center and stuff, Benny added. Guys, I said, you don't need to convince me. I know. Well, Benny started, then stopped, not knowing how to continue. I'll have a lot of free time soon, I said. His face reflected relief. Don't worry, I continued. I'll be staying here for a while. You were always so much better in the workshop, Maureen said. In the workshop? Said I. Yes, Benny explained. Someone has to fill the orders, right? Dad can't just leave everything behind, can he? At least I don't think they have that much in savings. I hadn't really thought about it, but it makes sense. Someone had to make custom cabinets, tables and chairs, dressers and bookcases, and they were right. Benny would lose his fingers within a week. A total klutz. You're right, I said. When Dad got home that evening, we went to the shed that served as his workshop, and the rest of his carpentry and woodworking business for that matter. You'll need to fill orders all the time, I explained on the way out. Yeah, he sighed, not really caring about it. I don't know. So why don't you show me what's in the bunker and I'll start first thing tomorrow? He stopped, turned around and looked at me intently. I had his attention, that's for sure. Do you even remember how to do any of this stuff? How to work with your hands? It'll come back, I promised. He moved his lips, gritting his teeth in thought. I'll stay home tomorrow, he said. I'll check everything out and keep an eye on you. See if you still have it. I smiled. Fair enough. Benny and Mo can hang out with your mom. She'll like that. You'll be rid of her worries for a while. He nodded. We went to the workshop and got busy with orders that needed to be filled, plans that needed to be finalized, invoices that needed to be raised, and everything else necessary to run your own little business. After more than 6 years of working with much larger figures, the business side of things didn't really intimidate me. However, looking at some of the figures in various stages of completion left me in awe. The tight joinery and sculptural shapes of the furniture made me break out in a sweat, and the hand dovetails on the drawers and cases scared the crap out of me. I hadn't done a hand dovetail joint in over 7 years, but I remembered how long it took me to master the art. Maybe just hire someone, I thought. Sam, I said into the phone, I need a serious vacation. What? He was in apoplectic shock, just as I'd suspected. Sam Runyon was senior vice president of bonds at McDaniel Smith, and the thought of taking time off went against his very essence. It's my mom, I explained. She had a stroke. Is she okay? He asked, still hoarse. No, Sam, she's not okay. She's in deep shit. She's not going to die or anything, is she? No, she's not going to die, I said. Then what's the problem? My dad, I explained. He needs someone around until she gets out of inpatient care. And for how long? About a month. A month, he growled, half grieving, half disbelieving. Maybe more, I said. More than a month, he moaned. That doesn't sound like... I don't know, Collins. I really don't. You're asking too much. That pissed me off. I gave my everything to these assholes and now they're pissed that I need to take care of my folks? You're kidding me, right? I'm sorry, I said, biting my tongue. I really can't get out of this one. I'll have to take it up with the higher-ups, he said. It's not that simple. I mean, you need a week, sure. You've got one. 2 weeks? Yes, we should be able to cover. But a month? I mean... I'm not asking you, Sam, I said, my voice getting hard as I struggled not to explode. I'm telling you, okay? He paused, no doubt surprised that someone would challenge his authority so blatantly. Do you realize what you're saying? He said. That perhaps you're giving up your current position? Is that what you want to do? I don't really have a choice, I said. This is about my parents, not some damn sick dog. And what are we supposed to do while you're gone? Who's supposed to have your back? That's not my problem. It sure as hell is your problem, Collins. This is your department. You're in charge of it. And what am I supposed to do? Exploded I. Just say, hey, sorry, Mom and Dad. I can't help you. I hope you don't lose everything in anything. Be sure to write at Christmas. Yeah? And Mom? Get well, sweetheart. Is that what you think I'm supposed to be doing here? I don't give a damn what you're doing, Collins, he snapped, his voice getting harsher. I'm just saying it's not my problem. And it's not McDaniel Smith's problem. Understand? Loud and clear, Sam, I said before I could even think about it. And Bonds isn't my problem right now either. And what does that mean? He demanded. I thought for a moment before answering. Those bastards had already gone a long way toward destroying my marriage, with no small amount of help from Christine and me. In pursuit of the almighty dollar, they demanded hours for which the slaves were willing to revolt. And now they want me to just abandon the only family I have left? That means 2 things, Sam, I said. First, it means I'm resigning. Immediately? I heard him catch his breath, then pull himself together. You said 2 things, he said slowly. The second thing is my severance pay, I said. I want $250. You're crazy, he exploded into the phone. You're quitting because of us. We're not firing you, and you're doing this without warning. And we're supposed to pay you for it? Read my employment contract, Sam, I said. We work 9 months into the fiscal year, and I have 60 vacation days accrued that you can't deny me. So you're going to pay me for the vacation I've earned and another $250,000 on top of that, as severance pay. And if we refuse? He asked, knowing better than to back himself into a corner without a full picture of the threat. Two things. One, I'll just take 60 days vacation, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Then I'll come back for the last 30 days and resign as soon as the fiscal year is over, in which case you'll still owe me a bonus. Second, I'll call Carl Stepford at Midlands Financial. I'll tell him I'm leaving you and why, and I'll find someone else. You wouldn't dare, he sighed, genuinely surprised at my utter assholishness. I wouldn't dare, I said. You owe me at least 90 for the bonus, and you'll be making money in the Midlands long after I'm gone. Let me call you back, he said. 20 minutes later, my cell phone rang. It didn't take long, Sam, I said. It's not Sam, said the measured baritone voice on the speakerphone on the other end. It's Bertram McReynolds. Oh, Mr. McReynolds, I said, surprised that the head of McDaniel Smith himself was calling. It seems there's been an unfortunate misunderstanding, Tyler, he said. How so, sir? I think Mr. Runyon may have been a little hasty in his response, Tyler. Perhaps was a little too harsh. I smiled, deciding not to say anything in response. Are you still there? Still here, sir. What I'm saying, Tyler, is that you have 60 days of vacation ahead of you. 60 days that you earned by breaking your back. And if you need that time to be with your family, we're all for it. Your job will be waiting for you when you get back, okay? I don't know, Mr. McReynolds, I said, knowing how I was going to proceed. I mean, he seemed awfully sure of the firm's position. I speak for this firm, Mr. Collins, rumbled McReynolds. There was a pause, and when he spoke next, his voice was softer. We're very sorry to hear about your mother, son, and we don't turn away, I don't turn away, from our valued employees in times of need. So if you need time, please take it. I'm sorry, sir, I said. I won't be back. I pictured poor Sam Runyon sitting across from McReynolds at that moment, cringing at the look that was undoubtedly burning his skin. But here's what I'm prepared to do, sir, I continued. You'll approve the severance package I've asked for, and I'll see to it that you keep the Midlands during the transition period. Let's face it, friends, Bertram McReynolds didn't care about me or my mom. He wanted to keep the Midlands. Okay, Tyler, he said warily. We're listening. You're assigning me a replacement. Then you'll send him, or her, and Sam to follow me to Chicago. I'll go with them to the Midlands and introduce them all to the people around here. I'll tell you a heartwarming story about why I'm leaving, despite your best efforts to help me. And I will ease their transition. I'll make sure they think you guys are still golden. There was a hissing whisper on the other end. Then McReynolds spoke again. I'm not sure Mr. Runyon is the right man to accompany you, he said. We're afraid what will happen. I knew what he was going to say, so I decided to let Runyon go. He'd always been good to me, even if he'd worked me to a pulp for 6 years. He kept his end of the bargain, but he was a company man. I knew how he'd react to my vacation offer. I just didn't know it would be a kick in the ass for me to part with my life forever. Mr. McReynolds, I interrupted. Sam Runyon is the best damn boss a man could ever have. I'm not mad at him and I don't hold a grudge. He's great at his job and our previous, disagreements have nothing to do with why I'm leaving. McReynolds cleared his throat. Oh, well, Tyler. Sir? Are you sure you won't change your mind? I'm sure, sir. There was another low whisper on the other end. We'll transfer the vacation pay to your account by the end of business today, he said. And we'll email you a severance agreement for your review. If you approve it, we'll pay you $250 at the end of your trip to the Midlands, okay? Half now, half at the end, I said. And a guarantee that the trip will be scheduled within 45 days. Clever boy, he grinned. And it's done. Deal? Deal, sir, I said. And Tyler? Sir? We're really sorry, both about your mother and about you leaving. Thank you, sir. 2 weeks later, I spent Thursday and half of Friday in Minneapolis, securing Midlands account work for my former employers. By the following Monday, the balance of my severance pay was in my bank account. So what the hell was I going to do? Not the slightest clue. That phone call gave me confidence that I wouldn't have to worry about money anytime soon. With my savings, stock options, and even after taxes, severance, and vacation pay, I had a tidy little nest egg of almost 700,000. It might not be enough for a posh life in West Palm Beach, Florida, but it was more than enough in Grant City, Illinois. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and everything was much cheaper in Grant City than in West Palm. So I had plenty of time to decide what to do with my life, and how to get my stuff from West Palm to Grant City. Susan, I said, calling the only person I really knew in Florida. It also helped that she had a key to my apartment. How's your mom? She asked. Better, I replied. Had a stroke. A pretty bad one. But she's better now, thanks for asking. I let out a breath that told me she really cared about the mother of a man she'd only spent 2 nights with. I was wondering if you could do me a favor. A book? She said. I paused, oblivious to her. No. It's a little more important than... I don't think there's anything more important than getting it published, she said, her voice becoming agitated. Jesus, Tyler, that's awesome. Have you read it? Of course I've read it, Susan said. You think I'm just going to pawn it off without making sure it's good? I chuckled, pleased with myself. And you liked it? Loved it, she said. And I already sent it to my friend. She should get it today or tomorrow. Well, thanks, I said. Both the praise and the fact that she'd kept a promise I'd completely forgotten about were beyond my expectations, if I'd remembered about the book at all. So, she said, you called. Yeah. Look, I'm going to be moving here for a while. Susan was silent. Disappointed? I couldn't tell. Mom's in rehab, I said after a minute. Dad has his own business, and he needs help running it right now. What about your brother? Bobby, or whatever his name is. Benny, I corrected. He's married. Kids. Lives 4 hours away by car. She fell silent again. And I need help getting my stuff up here, I continued. You have my key and everything. I was just thinking. Of course, Tyler, she said, her voice soft. You know you do. What do I need to do? Let me make some calls, I replied. See who I can hire. As soon as I find someone, I'll call you. Maybe you can just drop them a key or something. Sure, she said, trying to portray a cheerful mood. No problem. Anything. What's wrong? Said I. Nothing. Come on, I can tell. I don't know. I mean... Yeah, she sighed. Just that. Yes, said it all. She was interested in me. Cared about me. Maybe she wanted to try dating me. I'm sorry, I said. What else could I say? Don't be. She tried to laugh but couldn't. Shit happens, right? I guess so, I agreed. And it's only been a few days, right? Maybe the first time, I said, sadness overwhelming me. But not the second time. So it could have been more? I told you. You're special. Smart, sweet, beautiful. With a career. And 1,000 miles away, I added. So you quit? She asked. From your job? Uh-huh. The silence dragged on. 10 seconds. 20. Give me a number, she said. Whoever you hired. I'll make sure you get everything back, okay? Thanks, Susan. And expect a call from the agent, okay? Her name is Natalie. I will. And Tyler? She said. I heard her snort, like she was about to cry if she wasn't already. Yeah, baby. Take care of yourself, okay? You too. She hung up the phone. Chapter 6. 2 weeks later, in mid-June, My car, furniture, and all my personal belongings were safely delivered from Florida. Everything but the car, clothes, and computer had been put in the garage for safekeeping until I found a place of my own, which wasn't going to happen until Mom came home from rehab. A quick internet search gave me the address of Susan's employer. I never found out her home address, and I sent her diamond earrings for her help. She called to protest, but I didn't want to hear about it. She was there for me when I needed her, which was far more than I had any right to expect. I worked in the workshop 12 hours a day, sometimes with Dad, but usually alone. My woodworking skills came back to me, almost all of them. With Dad's help, I was able to fill orders and produce high-quality furniture and cabinets. Dad only had to correct a few glaring blunders. But what did he expect? In any case, he was getting much better quality than he was paying me for, which was zero. It was mid-morning, and I decided to take a break from working on the dovetails in the set of drawers for the low Queen Anne chair I was making out of quilted maple. Sipping my coffee, I pulled out my cell phone and saw a voicemail message. "Mr. Collins," said a husky female voice. "This is Natalie Jagodzinski. A mutual friend of ours forwarded me what you wrote. I have read it and would like to meet with you to discuss some matters. Please call me at your earliest convenience." She gave the number and I called her back. "South Beach Talent," a cheerful voice answered. "I'm returning Miss Jagodzinski's call," I said. "Can I tell her who's calling?" "Tyler Collins." "1 minute." And then 30 seconds later, the hoarse voice came back on the line. "Tyler," she said, her voice loud and cheerful. "Yes, ma'am." "Natalie," she said. "Call me Natalie." "Okay," I replied. "Natalie, you called? Wanted to meet me?" "Like yesterday." "So you've read Long Gone?" "Read it and loved it," she purred. "It was wonderful." She stretched out the N in wonderful. It came out wonderful. "Thank you. So you think, maybe someone, think I could get it published?" She laughed, a nasally coughing laugh, a laugh soaked in cigarettes and scotch. "No, darling," she said. "You can't publish it, but I can." I smiled. "Good. Then what are we going to do?" "Well, the first thing we'll do is sign you up, into our agency." "And how are we going to do that?" "Do you have a fax machine? Internet?" "Both," I said. "Give me your email address. I'll send you a standard agency agreement. You'll review it, make sure everything is in order, then sign it and mail it to me. Okay?" I hesitated. My research had told me how much agents charged, but I wasn't a lawyer. I wouldn't have understood half of what it said. "Can you copy Susan?" I asked. "In an email?" "Susan Karapova?" "Sure, honey," she said. "That's a good idea. Is she going to represent you next?" "I don't know. I'll have to ask her." "Consider it a deal," she said. At least she didn't seem like she was going to entertain the idea. If she'd had her heart set on it, she probably would have tried to talk me out of the whole lawyer thing, but her agreement was immediate and formal. "Have you met with any other agents yet?" she continued. "No." "Good," she purred, a sense of relief in her enthusiasm. "Then, if you don't mind, I'll start selling it to publishers." "Before we sign together?" I asked. "Are you going to have fun with me, Tyler?" she asked. "No." "Then I'm not going to entertain you, okay? And we need to hurry up with this. We can finish it by Christmas, and it'll be perfect." "So you think that's good?" I asked again. "No, Tyler. I think it's absolutely 100% brilliant. I think it's going to be a bestseller, maybe even win a few awards. So the sooner it's published, the better." I was flabbergasted. Sure, I'd killed myself writing it. But still, it was my first book. "Of course," Natalie said, interrupting my thoughts. "You'll need an editor. Some things need work and all that, but it's a regular thing. An editor will know where and what needs to be done." "An editor?" "The publisher usually appoints one," she said. "They always do." I hadn't thought of that. Apparently, even brilliant first books need tweaking, a more professional eye. Well, I said, whatever you think is right. I'm new at this and all. Okay, she said, pausing for a moment before continuing. What? Said I. What are you? Well, she said, taking a drag. There's a freelance editor near you. In Chicago. We could hire her and then get compensated. Is that kosher? There's a chance they won't agree to reimburse, and then you'd have to pay out of your share of the royalties. Maybe 10 to 15,000. But that way the book will come out sooner, right? By Christmas, she said. Then it'll be worth it, right? Maybe. Then do it. I'll get on it, she sighed. Okay, open and print out this letter. Discuss it with Susan or whoever you hire. Sign it and return it to me. I'll handle the publishing, okay? Okay, I said, and then thought about the message again. Do we need to meet? But she'd already hung up. Apparently meeting me wasn't in the plans, which was fine. I didn't want to go back to Florida just yet. Early the next day, Susan called early in the morning. According to her, the proposed agency agreement was in order, and I signed it. I felt like a real writer. After all, I had an agent, right? Chapter 17. The 4th of July fell on a Friday that year. So Thursday night turned into a busy night at the bar, where old classmates, friends, and relatives who had flown in from out of town to see long-lost loved ones gathered. And I was tired of writing nights, even though the new draft was well underway and almost finished. Even though it was originally created faster than the original story, I was now making it more complex by adding more layers to the plot. So I decided, what the heck? Dad was visiting Mom, and on the way home he decided to grab a bite to eat. It was almost 7:30, and I didn't mind socializing. A few beers at the bar and grill was perfect. So by 8, I showered, shaved, dressed in clean shorts and a golf shirt, and pulled into the crowded parking lot of the bar and grill. There are 3 types of people in Grant City. Those who go to the bar and grill, those who go to the Hitchhikers, and those who go to other bars. But if you combine all the other bars, they don't have the same success as bar and grill or Hitchhikers. This is mostly due to the food at these 2 hotspots. The food at the bar and grill is definitely better. Everyone knows this and pretty much agrees with it. But sometimes you want to eat a good greasy burger with salty fries, and that's when the Hitchhikers comes to the rescue. Also, the hitching rail hosts live bands a couple times a month, and you can still see some of the General Beauregard guys popping in here when they're not touring or working in the studio. So like I said, both have their devotees. I'm a bar and grill aficionado. I like that food because it's lighter and, well, yeah, a little more refined. It's definitely not your average pub. But mostly I prefer the atmosphere. There's a jukebox, sure, but it rarely gets too loud, and the tables are spaced far enough apart that you have a bit of space. I prefer quieter establishments where the bartender leaves me alone if I want to be left alone. Tonight, however, the establishment was packed to capacity. As I expected, the place was full of classmates from different years standing around tables, sharing pitchers of beer, talking about their families and careers, or just chatting about old times. The dining hall was full as well, and I quickly took my table. Need company for dinner? Came a voice behind me. Allie, I said without turning around. Same here, she replied, leaning over my shoulder and smacking my earlobe with her soft lips. I turned and took her under my arm. Allison Palmer, Christine's cousin. The prettiest of the Palmer girls, and there were many. Everyone in Grant City had been saying for years that old Grandpa Palmer should have been bred to studs because all the descendants in his line were such incredibly beautiful specimens of the female form. You look gorgeous, I said, looking at her smiling face and twinkling hazel eyes. You too, handsome, she replied, taking a sip from her bottle of Corona, but all the while keeping her eyes on me. Still single? Uh-huh, she replied. And I'm looking for a date for dinner. I smiled. If that were true, there'd be a damn line a mile long here. I'll give you the first chance, she said, raising an eyebrow in response to the invitation. I continued to smile, but my thoughts were racing at a mile a minute. Go back a couple months, and here I am already facing my ex-wife's cousin, who is trying to get me. Don't get me wrong, she was beautiful to death, but it didn't seem like a good idea to me. You're not married, she said, going on the offensive. She left you, not the other way around. That means you're free to date whoever you want. Yeah, but your father! Her father! She laughed, flashing smooth, impossibly bright teeth. And she had Christine's dimples when she smiled, I noticed. And Christine's look. The look. The look of the Palmer girl. A look of invitation that was hard to resist. I'm not inviting you to a family reunion, Tyler, she said, holding out her beer to me. I took a sip, closing my eyes and enjoying the way the icy lime-flavored beer worked its way down my throat. This wasn't a good idea. Sure, I said. I'd love to have dinner with you, Allie. We chatted easily while we waited for our table, and then at dinner. It was an easy thing to do. After all, we'd known each other for most of our lives. We went to the same Christmas parties, Thanksgiving dinners, picnics, family reunions, and get-togethers for almost a decade. She was only a year later than me in high school, and we practically ran with the same company. So we had a lot to talk about. Thank goodness she waited until dinner was over, while we were sharing a bowl of cherry jubilee and vanilla ice cream, and started talking about the ex. She's miserable, you know that. Who is? Said I. Christine. I remained silent. They're stuck in this crappy little 2-bedroom apartment on Adams, she continued. His apartment is left over from when they got married. It's small and crappy and she stays home alone all day, with the baby and does nothing. There's not enough money and everything. That's her problem, I said. She made her bed. She said you've been ignoring her, Allison prodded. You were gone all the time, on business, working forever, and she was always home alone, with no friends and no business. Then she should have gotten off her ass and gotten a job, I said, trying to contain my anger. You're right, Allison agreed. I'd rather not talk about her, I said. Just thought you might want to know, she said. She screwed up and she knows it damn well. Good. So, she said, now that you're back and all, now that you don't have that high-pressure job 1,000 miles away. Yeah, said I. Both would do. Well, she said, are you thinking about trying to get it back? You're kidding, right? She raised her right eyebrow in a mixture of surprise and delight. Not a chance in hell, I said. She's married now, with his child. So like I said, she made her bed. So if she was married but it was your kid? I stared at her. What difference does it make? None. And she's already found her knight in shining armor. They can have each other. I have an idea, she said. I'm all ears. How about we go up to the bar? Maybe we can have a few more drinks. Sounds great, I said, figuring out how much the bartender would charge me for a dish of maraschino cherries. Then, she said, leaning closer, we can go back to my place for a while. There it was, the moment of decision. The second when I could either do the smart thing or accept her invitation. Sounds like a plan, I whispered. Are you sure? She asked. Because you're not so sure, Tyler. I smiled. Positive. What can I say? I'm a man, right? A flesh and blood one. Allie had a small house on Polk Street on the north side of town. She taught English at Grant City High School, so she didn't make much money. Plus, she had never married or had children, so she only had to spend money on herself and her house. The house was neat, tastefully decorated, and hung with pictures of many generations and branches of the Palmer clan. Just looking at the pictures of all those beautiful cousins would have made a dead man's heart ache. But what turned me on was what Allie did as soon as we walked through the door. She walked ahead, and I followed her until I ran into her in the dark living room. I've wanted this for a long time, she said, kissing me. It happened that I spent the night in her house. The next morning she got up before me, which was a role reversal for me. I usually get up with the sun, which rises pretty early in July. Breakfast? She asked from the doorstep. 2 days later, I was at the Piggly Wiggly looking at watermelons when I heard her voice behind me. Was entertaining my cousin supposed to be some sick way to get back at me? I didn't turn around. I'm talking to you, Christine said. And I'm shopping here, I said, picking out a watermelon and putting it in the cart. It's good to see you. Have a good day. With her was a little boy who wasn't even a year old. He was cute and chubby, with blonde hair and amazing blue eyes. He looked at me bewildered, and I smiled back at him. A smile spread across his face, and droplets of saliva sprinkled from the corners of his mouth. Hey, handsome, I said softly. He waved his hands in response, and his smile grew even wider. Christine shifted her gaze from me to her son, then back and forth a couple times. How's that going? She insisted. I don't know what you're talking about, I replied, waved goodbye to the baby, then turned to my car and pointed it toward the bakery. She followed me. She couldn't wait to tell me, Christine said. And Scylla, for that matter. And? It's my fault, how? Jesus, Tyler, she's my cousin, she said, as I rummaged through loaves of French bread, searching out any that were slightly stale. The tomatoes were early this year, and I wanted to make a tomato, basil, and bread salad for dinner, drizzled with fruity extra virgin olive oil. It paired perfectly with grilled chicken from a can of beer. So, I said, putting the 2-day-old loaf of bread in the cart and heading toward the meat department. She was still following me, annoyed by my nonchalance. Stay away from her, Christine said. There are plenty of single women in Grant City for you. I think you can stay away from my family, for heaven's sake. No, I said, looking at the chickens. What? I picked a chicken, put it in the cart, and turned to face her. I said no. She stared at me, but I kept an impassive expression on my face. You gave up the right to tell me who to date, I said evenly. It's none of your business, so stay out of it. But Allie made it my business, Christine muttered. So it's all out in the open now. I shrugged. It was bound to happen sooner or later, I guess. And you think that's cute? Rubbing my nose in like that? I'm not rubbing anything in your face, Christine, I said, put my hands on the cart, and rolled toward the cash register. Tyler, she said behind me. But I ignored her. I had grilled chicken and tomato salad with bread to make, and Allie was coming over for dinner. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.